I used to think treachery was something you saw in movies. Dramatic music swelling as a villain twirls his mustache and announces, "I've been fooling you all along." Yet betrayal isn't always loud. Sometimes it slips up on you like a burglar, in the night, sneaking through crevices you didn't even realize were there. For me, it happened at what was meant to be a lovely evening, our annual family reunion. I remember the fragrance of rosemary chicken wafting from the kitchen, mixed with the sounds of laughter and the occasional clink of glasses. It was one of those nights where everything felt warm, uncomplicated, usual. Except, if I had paid attention, I would have recognized the oddity in it all. Evelyn, my wife, was dazzling, more radiant than usual. Her smile stretched just a touch, too wide. Her laughter rang out just a little too loud. She strolled among the throng like she was hosting an awards gala, not an informal family meal. And the way she looked at my cousin Ryan, that was the biggest indicator of all. Ryan had always been the charming kind, the kind of guy who walked into a room and commanded attention without trying. Growing up, he was the one the girls fawned over, the one the uncles lifted their glasses to. I never envied him, never had the urge to compete. But tonight, there was something strange in the air, something unnerving. I should have anticipated it. But I didn't. Not until the moment Evelyn rose up mid-dinner, her wine glass held gracefully in one hand, and smirked. "I have something to say," she declared, her voice piercing through the bustle of chatter. The room dropped into silence. My father, who had been in the middle of his typical discourse about family values, halted with his fork halfway to his mouth. My mother's eyes glanced between Evelyn and me, sensing something odd. I laid my glass down, my fingers curling around the table. My stomach churned, screaming at me to brace myself. Evelyn turned her gaze toward me, and in that instant, I saw it, the evident satisfaction in her eyes, like she was relishing this, like she had rehearsed it 100 times. "I'm leaving you," she said. Someone gasped. But that's not all. She continued, her lips curling into a slow, determined smile. "I'm leaving you for Ryan." The weight of her words poured over the table like a tidal wave. There was a loud clatter as someone dropped their cutlery. My uncle, Ryan's father, froze, his visage shifting from confusion to disbelief. My mother's face twisted into something between shock and wrath, her hands gripping the edge of the table like she needed to hold herself in place. And me? I just sat there. I didn't blink. I didn't flinch. Evelyn's smile wavered, just slightly. She had expected a reaction, a loud, chaotic outburst, maybe a shattered plate, maybe even me tossing the table in a fit of rage. But instead, I took a slow sip of my wine, letting the tannins settle on my tongue, then laid the glass down with care. "Is that all?" I asked. Evelyn halted. A flash of worry crossed her face. She wasn't expecting this. She wanted drama. She wanted me to crumble in front of everyone. Ryan, sitting across the table, shifted uncomfortably. He wasn't smirking like Evelyn was. No. He looked like a man who had just realized he walked into a lion's den dressed as a gazelle. "Clara, I realize this must be shocking," Ryan began, his voice oddly unsteady. "Not," I interrupted, getting up slowly. My gaze ran over the room, the tension thick enough to suffocate on. "But I am wondering about one thing." Evelyn lifted her chin, trying to recover control of the moment. "And what's that?" I tilted my head, looking at Ryan with something that almost resembled amusement. "Did he promise you a part in the company?" The blood drained from Evelyn's face. Around us, murmurs burst out, quiet whispers among relatives attempting to digest what they had just witnessed. "Because," I continued, reaching into my pocket for my phone, "that might be a little complicated." Ryan's jaw clenched. "What the hell are you talking about?" "Oh, you'll find out soon enough." I tapped the screen of my phone, my lips curving slightly as I stared at Evelyn. But by all means, don't let me stop you two from celebrating your major announcement. Evelyn's confidence slipped. I could see the flash of worry, the silent, "What does he know?" twisting behind her eyes. "Clara," she started, but I was already walking away, my fingers tightening around my phone. I didn't need to make a scene. I didn't need to throw insults or demand answers, because what Evelyn didn't know, what she never saw coming, was that I had known about this affair long before tonight. I had seen the late-night emails. I had heard the whispered phone calls. I had found the receipts, the secret weekend excursions, the money being siphoned from our accounts. I had known, and I had prepared. She thought she was embarrassing me tonight, that she was winning. She had no idea what was coming next. As I stepped outside onto the terrace, the cold night air swept over me, robbing the warmth from my skin. Behind me, the pandemonium of the dining room continued, relatives whispering, my mother screaming, my father demanding explanations. Yet, none of it mattered. I pulled out my phone and sent a single message to Simon, my lawyer. "It's time." My breath curled in the air as I glanced up at the night sky. They believed they had played me, yet they had stepped straight into a game I had been setting up for them. And now it was my turn to play. Recognizing what he had lost, by the time they eventually made their way toward the door, their faces were pallid, hollow, robbed of every ounce of swagger they had begun the night with. But just as they neared the threshold, I spoke one more. "Time." "Oh," I murmured casually. "One more thing." They turned, hesitant, afraid. I smiled. "Have fun explaining all of this to the authorities tomorrow morning." Evelyn's breath hitched. Ryan's eyes went wide. And before they could utter another word, before they could try to beg, plead, or negotiate their way out, I turned my back on them. And just like that, they were gone. As Evelyn and Ryan walked out of that house, humiliated and cut off from the family, they thought that was the worst of it. They were mistaken. That was just the beginning, because while they were scrambling to figure out where to go, who to turn to, and how to rescue their mess, I was already 5 steps ahead. See, stripping them of their dignity was amazing. Witnessing their arrogance fall, seeing the sheer panic on their expressions when they discovered they had no allies left, that was a win all on its own. Because revenge isn't about theatrics. It's about consequences. And for Evelyn and Ryan, the actual consequences were about to begin. The moment they realized they were screwed, it started early the next morning. By then, Ryan and Evelyn were holed up in some cheap motel room on the outskirts of town, because of course they had nowhere else to go. Evelyn couldn't exactly return to our home, Ryan couldn't go back to his father's house, and none of our family would even take their calls. So they waited there, desperate and clueless, until Ryan's phone rang. And that's when reality hit them like a freight train. It wasn't a worried friend or a compassionate family member on the other end. It was his company's finance department. More particularly, it was the head of fraud investigations. Ryan sat up in bed, rubbing his eyes, presumably assuming it was simply a normal call. But the instant he heard the words, "urgent investigation of financial discrepancies," the color drained from his cheeks. "What?" he croaked out. I don't understand." "What discrepancies?" The woman on the other end, a no-nonsense accountant, named Margaret, wasted no time. "Mr. Dawson," she stated, her tone professional but stern, "our internal audit has found numerous unlawful transactions linked to your account. You'll need to come in for an immediate evaluation." Ryan sprang up from the bed, running a nervous hand through his hair. "What transactions?" There was a pause. Then Margaret stated 2 things that made his stomach drop. Luxury costs. Evelyn, who had been lying in bed, unaware of the firestorm that was about to consume them, sat up at that. Ryan felt the sweat forming on the back of his neck. I don't know what you're talking about. Then you should have no difficulty coming in to clarify it, Margaret said. Today. Ryan's mouth opened, but no words came out, because deep down, he already knew. He knew exactly what this was about. The demise of Ryan Dawson. By the time Ryan arrived at his office later that morning, the business had already begun, its full-scale inquiry. And by investigation, I mean they were tearing through every account, every transaction, and every financial record with a fine-tooth comb. Simon, my lawyer, had made sure of that. No, I hadn't just exposed Ryan at the family reunion for dramatic effect. I had done it carefully, timed it properly, so that his firm would be forced to initiate their own probe before he had a chance to cover his tracks. And suddenly, Ryan was sitting in a cold, antiseptic meeting room surrounded by stone-faced executives as they laid out his offenses in black and white: embezzlement, misuse of business funds, unlawful transactions. The numbers didn't lie.